The stars above the rogue planet Chiron 7 hung like cold white lanterns in a black sea. There was no sun, only the faint glow of distant stars and the weak light from a dying nebula. The ground was a gray desert of fine dust that stuck to everything. The wind never stopped. It whispered softly across the plains, moving the dust into quiet dunes. Dr. Liana Cross stood alone in this silent land. She wore a sand-colored suit, a helmet with a cracked visor, and a small pack on her back. Her boots left a clear trail in the soft gray dust. Liana was a surveyor, simple human explorer sent to scan unclaimed worlds for rare minerals. Her scanner beeped softly, marking small mineral deposits in old rock formations. It should have been a calm day. Nothing ever happened here. The planet was dead, quiet, and empty. But then, something changed. A sound broke through the wind. It was soft at first, just a thin, strange voice that seemed almost like static. Liana stopped walking. She turned her helmet slowly, listening. The sound grew louder. Human. Human, can you assist my backside? Liana froze. Her heartbeat skipped. The voice was not human. It was metallic, deep, but also oddly polite. It repeated again, clearer now. Human, can you assist my backside? I will serve you for life. Liana blinked. What? She said quietly to herself. She looked down at her scanner. The signal was coming from the northwest, about 1 kilometer away. Her training said she should ignore strange signals and return to base. But she was human curious, stubborn, and perhaps a little too brave. She changed direction and began walking toward the source. As she moved closer, the signal grew stronger. The wind howled around her legs. The dust clung to her boots. Her breath was warm inside the helmet, and the air filters hummed softly. A faint blinking light appeared ahead, a faint blue glow through the gray fog of dust. When she finally reached the source, she stopped in surprise. Before her lay a giant machine, half buried in the soft gray ground. It looked like a fallen animal, for huge legs stretched out awkwardly, its metal body tilted to one side. Its back armor was cracked, wires sticking out like broken bones. It was a Titan construct-a-war machine used by the Vorex Dominion. Liana had only seen pictures and history briefings. These machines were legendary. 10 meters tall, nearly indestructible, each one carried an alien AI brain called a core mind. Now, one of these machines lay helpless in front of her, like an overturned turtle. Its head, or what looked like a head, turned slowly to face her. A glowing red eye blinked weakly. Then the voice came again, but this time it sounded embarrassed. Human. Greetings. I have fallen on my backside. Assistance is required. I will serve you for life if you help me. Liana raised an eyebrow inside her helmet. You're serious? She muttered. I do not joke. The machine replied quickly. Varkarel of the Titan 7th Legion does not joke about such matters. Assistance of the backside is sacred. Sacred. Liana almost laughed. She stepped closer carefully. The ground around the machine was soft. Its heavy weight had made a deep hole. The machine continued speaking in its polite, robotic voice. By the old code of the Vorex Dominion, if one is assisted in rising, they owe a life debt. It is very serious. Liana slowly walked around the machine, examining it like an engineer. She noticed 2 of its legs were stuck deep in the dust, and its balance center was too far to the side. No wonder it couldn't get up. Even a full Vorex recovery team would have needed heavy lift ships. Liana sighed. You're lucky I'm good at weird problems, she whispered to herself. She opened her pack and pulled out a few tools, magnetic anchors, a portable tether, and 2 small energy boosters. These were meant for moving survey drones, not war machines. But she was human. Humans improvised. Varkarel the machine watched her every movement with its red eye. You are small, it commented softly. Tiny, a primitive organic. You cannot possibly lift me, Liana smirked. Watch me. She worked fast, planting the magnetic anchors into the ground and attaching the tethers to the machine's side. She then positioned the boosters at an angle. If she could make a temporary lever and pull the machine's center of mass back over its legs. Maybe, just maybe, it would tip back upright. While she worked, the machine kept talking. "Human, why do you help? You have no gain from this, my people. They do not treat your kind as allies." "I'm not doing this for them," Liana said without looking up. "I'm doing this because it's a problem, and I like solving problems." The machine fell silent for a moment. Then it spoke more quietly. "Strange. Very strange." Liana finished setting up the system and wiped the gray dust off her gloves. She climbed onto a small boulder and tapped her wrist console. "Okay, big guy," she said. "On my signal, try to move your left front leg upward. Just a little, I understand." She counted down. 3, 2, 1. The boosters fired. A wave of hot air blew across the dust. The tethers strained. The machine groaned loudly as metal bent under pressure. For a second, nothing happened. Then slowly, the Titan shifted. It rolled its weight, moving just enough to lift its side out of the hole. The sound of metal grinding against rock echoed across the plain. Liana shouted, "Now! Push harder!" The machine roared. Its leg engines powered up with a low hum. With a final heave, the massive Titan rose back onto its legs. Dust exploded around them as the weight slammed into the ground. The wind carried the noise far across the empty land. Liana jumped down from the boulder, coughing in the dust but smiling wide. "Told you," she said, brushing her hands off. The red eye blinked slowly. "This should not have been possible," Varkarel said, his voice softer now. "No human could do this alone. Your kind has no heavy lift technology here." Liana tilted her head. "Yeah, well, humans have brains. That helps." Varkarel lowered its massive frame down slightly. It was almost like a bow. "Then hear this. I, Varkarel, of the 7th Legion, swear eternal service to you. My life is yours. I owe you my honor." Liana laughed nervously. Whoa, hold on. I didn't do this, so you'd become my servant." "It is not optional," Varkarel said seriously. "It is the old vow. A Titan does not break a vow." Before Liana could answer, her scanner beeped rapidly. She looked down and saw multiple red dots blinking on the map. Something big was coming. A soft rumble grew beneath their feet. At first, Liana thought it was just the shifting ground. But then the rumble grew louder. The dust on the surface began to vibrate. Varkarel's sensors lit up like a starship console. "Warning," he said. "Dominion fleet inbound." "Multiple ships? They have detected my signal." Liana's stomach turned cold. The Vorex Dominion was one of the most feared forces in this part of space. If they were sending ships, they were not coming for tea? Vark? She asked. "How many ships are we talking about?" 7 interceptors. 2 troop carriers. Estimated arrival in 6 minutes? He replied calmly. 6 minutes, Liana repeated. She wasn't a soldier. She was a surveyor. She had a broken rover, a pack of tools, and a really big alien robot who now said he was her servant. This was not in the mission plan. She took a deep breath. Humans panicked fast, but they also adapted fast. "All right," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "We can't stay here." "Can you walk?" "Yes," Varkarel replied. "But my energy core is at 40%. I cannot fight a full fleet." "We're not fighting," Liana said. "We're running." The Titan began to walk, each step shaking the soft ground. Liana ran beside it, her small legs moving quickly to keep up. They headed toward the canyons to the east. If they could reach the old mining tunnels, maybe they could hide. As they moved, Liana spoke through her helmet radio. "Vark, why are they coming for you?" "Aren't they your people?" "They are my creators," he said. "But I failed them. I fell during a transport accident. A Titan that cannot stand is useless. They would rather destroy me than repair me. Dominion law allows no weakness."
"Oh."
Liana frowned. "That's cold. It's how they have always been," Vark said. His voice sounded more alive now, less robotic. "Strength is everything. They do not understand mercy." "Yeah," Liana muttered. Humans are different. The wind grew stronger as they entered the canyon. Sharp rocks jutted from the ground. The walls rose high on either side, hiding them from the open sky. Liana stopped to catch her breath, leaning against a rock. Varkarel crouched down to lower his massive frame. His red eye glowed dimly. "Human," he said softly, "you could leave me here. The Dominion will not chase a single human. You would be safe." Liana looked up at him and shook her head. "Not my style." "You're strange," he said again, almost like it was a compliment. She smirked. "You're just figuring that out?" Above them, the first Dominion ships broke through the upper atmosphere. Their engines burned like falling stars. Varkarel tracked them with his internal sensors. "They are searching for me," he said. "I can mask part of my signal, but not all." Liana pulled out her scanner. "We can mask the rest," she said quickly. She found an old mining tunnel nearby, a narrow hole in the canyon wall with half-collapsed support beams. It was just big enough for Vark to squeeze in if he lowered his frame. "Inside," she said. "Hurry." They moved into the tunnel. The ground was uneven, but the darkness swallowed their shapes. Liana placed a few signal jammers near the entrance. She had built them years ago from spare parts. They were weak, but combined with Vark's internal masking, it might just work. The Dominion ships passed overhead with a low rumble. The ground shook as their engines roared. Liana and Vark stayed completely still. The only sound was the slow hiss of her breathing through the helmet and the quiet hum of Vark's core. After several long minutes, the ships moved on. The rumble faded into the distance. Liana let out a slow breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "We're safe." "For now," she whispered. Varkarel turned his head slightly toward her. "I did not expect this outcome," he said. "When you first approached, I thought you were a scavenger. Most would have stripped me for parts." "Yeah, well, I'm not most," Liana said. "You could have run, but you helped." She gave a small shrug. "Guess I like lost causes." They sat in silence for a while. The tunnel was cold and damp, with old mining carts rusted into the walls. Outside, the wind continued to sing through the canyon. Finally, Varkarel spoke again. "Human, I have a question." "Yeah," she asked, checking her scanner. "Why do you act this way? Your kind is fragile, weak compared to us. Yet you act without fear." Liana chuckled softly. "Oh, I have fear, lots of it. But humans are good at pretending we don't. We're stubborn. We fix things. And sometimes we do crazy stuff that works." The Titan tilted its massive head like a curious animal. Strange and admirable. Hours passed as they rested in the tunnel. Liana slowly repaired her broken rover equipment, while Varkarel recharged part of his energy core through emergency converters. The red glow in his eye grew brighter. When Liana finally leaned back against a wall, tired and dusty, she saw Vark watching her quietly. "What?" she asked with a half-smile. "In my world," Vark said slowly, "strength is only physical. Power comes from metal and engines. But you tiny human, you lifted a Titan without weapons. You moved me with cleverness." Liana laughed softly. "Yeah, I guess humans are good at cleverness. Perhaps that is why the Dominion fears your kind," he said quietly. "Not because you are strong, but because you are unpredictable." Liana thought about that for a moment, then smirked. Unpredictable sounds about right. As night fell on Chiron 7, the wind grew colder. Outside, the Dominion ships still searched, their scanners sweeping the plains. But they could not find what they were looking for. Inside the tunnel, human and a Titan sat side by side, an unlikely pair brought together by a ridiculous request. "Vark," Liana said suddenly. "Yes, human?" "About that whole 'I'll serve you for life' thing." "It is binding," he said immediately. "Yeah," she sighed. "I guess I'd better get used to having a 10-meter bodyguard." The red eye blinked once, slowly. "It is an honor, human Liana." She closed her eyes, tired but strangely calm. For the first time since landing on this empty world, she didn't feel alone, far above. The stars watched silently as the rogue planet turned, and a new bond between species began to grow, out of war. but from something far more human, helping someone who needed it. The wind outside the mining tunnel never stopped. It blew like a cold whisper through the rocks. Carrying gray dust into every crack and corner, Dr. Liana Cross sat near the tunnel wall, helmet resting on her knees. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but her mind was sharp. Varkarel, the massive titan, crouched near the entrance. His red eye glowed softly in the dark like a quiet campfire. For hours, they had listened to the Dominion ships searching above. Liana had grown used to the distant hum of engines in the night sky. Finally, the sound began to fade. The ships were moving further away. Liana checked her wrist console. "They're spreading out," she whispered. "They don't know where we are. Good." Varkarel's deep voice filled the tunnel softly. "They will not give up easily. The Dominion does not forgive. I have failed them once. They will not allow me to live." Liana looked up at the giant machine. His tone was calm, but beneath it was something close to fear, not fear of pain, but fear of shame. "Vark," she said quietly, "you didn't fail. You fell down." "Everyone falls down," tilted his head slightly, confused. "For Vorax, falling is failure," Liana said with a half-smile. "For humans, falling is just the start of getting back up." For a moment, the tunnel was quiet, except for the soft hum of Vark's energy core. Then he said, "You are strange, human Liana. Your way of thinking is different." She laughed softly. "Yeah, I get that a lot." Hours later, as the first dim light of the distant nebula filtered through the canyon cracks, Liana stood up. Her back ached, but her mind was made up. Hiding wouldn't work forever. Sooner or later, the Dominion would find them. "We can't stay here," she said, tightening her utility belt. "They'll find this place. We need to move." "Where will we go?" Vark asked. "There's an old mining hub 30 kilometers east," she explained. "It has deep tunnels and signal disruptors still buried in the rock. If we get there, we can hide properly. Maybe even build something useful." Vark's red eye brightened slightly. "I can walk. I will follow your lead." "Good," Liana said, brushing dust off her suit. "Let's make them work for their trouble." They left the tunnel at dawn. The gray sky stretched endlessly above them, and the wind carried thin trails of silver dust. Vark moved carefully, his massive metal legs shaking the ground with each step. Liana walked beside him, her scanner lighting the way, as they moved across the dusty plains. They talked. "Why did your people build titans like you?" Liana asked. "To conquer," Vark answered simply. "The Vorax Dominion believes in strength. Titans are the tools of that strength. We were created to lead armies, to break walls, to stand tall where others fall." "Sounds lonely," Liana said quietly. Vark paused for a moment. "It was, until now." Liana looked up at the towering machine, surprised by the soft tone in his voice. He wasn't just a machine. He was something more, a being who had never known choice. By midday, they reached a wide plateau overlooking the mining basin. In the distance, the ruins of the old hub could be seen, tall broken towers, half-buried conveyor lines, and the rusted remains of human machines that had been left behind decades ago. Liana stopped and checked the area through her scanner. "No patrols yet," she said. "We're clear." But Vark lifted his head suddenly. His sensors were far more powerful than her tools. "No," he said in a low voice. "They are coming." A faint vibration ran through the ground. Liana felt it in her boots. She looked up and saw dark shapes moving in the sky, small, sharp, like black arrows. "Drones," she muttered. "Dominion scout drones," Vark confirmed. "They search in wide circles. They will find us if we keep moving in the open." Liana scanned the terrain quickly. The plateau was too flat. They needed cover. Then she saw a collapsed pipe running down the slope. "There." She pointed. Vark lowered his massive frame and crawled behind the pipe with surprising grace for his size. Liana pressed herself against the cold metal. A moment later, 3 black drones streaked across the sky, their scanners casting blue light over the dust. The light passed over their hiding place but didn't stop. The drones kept going. Liana exhaled slowly. That was close. When the drones disappeared over the ridge, they continued toward the mining hub, moving more carefully. They reached the edge of the old facility by afternoon. The structures were ancient and silent. Rusted beams stuck out like broken bones. Cracked solar panels hung loosely from towers. Liana stepped through the ruined gates with a strange feeling. I used to read about these old mines, she said softly. Humans built them fast, worked them hard, then moved on to the next place. You built, Vark said slowly, looking at the ruins, even without strength like ours. And yet you conquered worlds. It's not conquered, Liana corrected him gently. Explored, survived. Vark's red eye blinked. Perhaps there is more than one kind of strength. They found a large underground shaft near the center of the hub. It led deep into the rock, where the signal from outside was weak. Vark could barely fit through the opening, but with careful steps, he squeezed inside. Liana climbed down a rusted ladder, using her headlamp to light the way. The tunnel below was dark, silent, and dry. Old mining carts lay scattered, covered in thick layers of dust. But there was power. Small emergency generators still hummed faintly after all these years. Liana smiled. This will work. She spent hours setting up her equipment. Jammers, scanners, emergency lights. She even managed to connect the generators to Vark's core, giving him extra energy. He watched her work closely. You fix things fast, said. Humans are good at fixing broken stuff, she replied with a grin. Later that night, they sat inside the old control room. Liana had set up a small map of the area on a screen, showing Dominion patrols moving slowly across the plains. The fleet was still searching. They won't stop, she said quietly. We need a plan. Vark lowered his head slightly. I can fight. Liana shook her head. No, you said your energy's low. Fighting a whole fleet is suicide. We can't beat them with strength. Then how? A small smile formed on her face. With cleverness. She began sketching on the screen, drawing tunnels, generators, and weak points in the terrain. This place has old mining infrastructure, power cables, blast tunnels, electromagnetic coils. We can use all that. Vark watched as she explained her idea. You want to build a trap, he said finally. Exactly, she said, tapping the screen. We can't win by force, but we can make them think they've lost control. The next 2 days were busy. Liana and Vark worked side by side like an odd team, flesh and steel. She moved quickly through the tunnels, reconnecting power cables, placing signal projectors, and rerouting old circuits. Vark used his massive strength to move broken beams, clear rubble, and carry heavy equipment at night. They rested in the control room. Vark would ask questions about humans, and Liana would answer. Why do humans help strangers? He asked one night, because we know what it feels like to need help, she said simply. And why risk your life for me? She leaned back in her chair. Because you asked. Vark was silent for a moment, processing her words. No one had ever helped him just because they wanted to. On the third day, Dominion ships finally appeared over the mining hub. The ground shook as their engines roared above the ruins. Liana watched them through an old, cracked window. Right on time, she whispered. Vark stood beside her. They have 10 drones and 2 troop carriers. I know, she said calmly. Let's make this interesting. She pressed a few buttons on the console. Around the mining hub, old energy coils began to hum softly. A fake signal one that looked like Vark's core signature flashed brightly to the enemy scanners. The Dominion ships turned toward it immediately. They're taking the bait, Liana said. The first wave of drones swept in low, searching the surface. Their scanners locked onto the fake signal hidden in an abandoned storage dome. Liana and Vark watched through a camera feed as the drones gathered there. They are preparing to fire, Vark said. Good, Liana replied. That's what we want. She activated the old coil system. A blinding burst of electromagnetic interference filled the air. The drone's scanners went wild. They spun out of formation, confused and disoriented. The troop carriers, seeing the chaos, descended lower to investigate. Vark and Liana moved through the tunnels to the lower shafts. Vark's heavy steps echoed softly, but he moved carefully, guided by her directions. Once they come down, she said, they'll think you're weak and alone. But we'll show them humans don't give up that easy. I still do not understand why you risk this, Vark said. She smiled up at him. Because nobody likes a bully. As the troop carriers landed near the fake signal, Liana triggered the second part of the plan. The old mining support beams gave way, collapsing the upper platforms around the dome. Dust and rock filled the air. The carriers were trapped in a storm of confusion. Vark emerged from the shadows then. His massive frame rose from the dust like a mountain. The Dominion forces froze. They expected a broken Titan, weak and alone. Instead, they saw a machine standing tall beside a human. Liana stood at his side, calm and fearless. Dominion forces, Vark said, through his external speaker. His voice echoed across the ruins like thunder. This world is no longer yours to claim. Liana leaned toward him and whispered. That sounded pretty cool. The enemy tried to regroup, but the old infrastructure was working against them. The mining hub was a maze of collapsing tunnels, shifting platforms, and magnetic interference. Their scanners showed multiple false signals. They didn't know where to attack. Liana moved through the control tunnels like she had lived there all her life. Every switch she flipped added to the confusion. She turned the mining machines on and off, redirected their own signals, shut down their landing locks. Vark stood guard at the main entrance, his massive arms forming a shield around their position. He didn't fire a single shot, he didn't need to. The enemy was fighting the environment itself. The commander of the Dominion ships, far above, realized too late that they were trapped in a mess they didn't understand. One by one, their drones lost contact. Their carriers couldn't lift off due to the power surge from the old mining grid. And through it all, a single Titan signal burned steady and strong. Finally, the Dominion forces pulled back. The fleet began to retreat into orbit, engines roaring as they disappeared into the starless sky. They hadn't been defeated by guns. They had been defeated by a human's cleverness. Liana stood on a cracked platform watching the last lights fade. The wind whipped around her, carrying dust into the dark. Vark stepped up beside her, his red eye glowing warmly. You did this, he said quietly. We did this, she corrected him. He lowered his head slightly. No, I had strength. But it was your mind that turned strength into victory. She crossed her arms and gave a small grin. Guess we make a good team. Vark lowered down to one knee, his massive frame towering above her, but his voice soft. I swore to serve you because of a vow. But now, I wish to serve you because of choice. Liana looked up at him, surprised by the weight of his words. You don't have to serve me, Vark. He shook his head slowly. No, but I want to stand with you. You showed me a different kind of strength. As the dust settled over the mining hub, silence returned to Chiron 7. But it was not the cold silence from before. It felt alive now, like the planet had witnessed something new, a bond between two very different beings. Liana walked toward the control room with Vark following close behind. The tunnels that once felt like ruins now felt like the beginning of something. A base, a home, a place where new plans could be made. What happens now? Vark asked. Liana looked up at the stars above the cracked ceiling. Now we build. And maybe, one day, we make the Dominion regret ever underestimating us. Vark's red eye brightened. Then I will be at your side, human Liana. Weeks passed on Chiron 7. Liana repaired old equipment, turned the mining hub into a hidden shelter, and learned more about Vark's systems. In return, Vark taught her about the Dominion's technology and strategy. They became partners, not just by vow, but by trust. Sometimes, Liana would sit outside on a rock at night, looking at the endless stars. Vark would stand nearby, silent but always watching over her. Funny, she said one night, a few weeks ago, you were stuck on your back? Yes, Vark replied calmly. And a strange little human came to help. She laughed. Yeah, that was me. One evening, a small message reached Liana's console. It was from a distant human outpost, searching for lost surveyors. She looked at the blinking screen for a long time. She could return to human space if she wanted to. But as she turned to look at Vark, standing proudly beside the old mining towers, she realized she didn't want to leave. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a beginning. Liana stood on the old platform, wind blowing her hair across her face. Vark knelt beside her, towering like a steel mountain. She placed her hand on his metal arm. "Ready for whatever comes next?" she asked. His red eye glowed brighter. "Always." Far above, the stars shone quietly. The Dominion might return one day with more ships and more strength, but they would face something they could never fully understand: a human's will. And on that cold, forgotten world, a legend was born. Not of conquerors, not of soldiers, but of a stubborn human and a titan who learned that true strength doesn't always come from power sometimes. It comes from the heart.